We have covered a lot of ground today. We named the hollow room. We studied the blindness. We built a framework for seeing clearly. Now, I want to do something harder. I want to talk about both sides. Because everything I have said today, about absence, about disconnection, about being unseen in the most intimate moments of your life, that is not a story about what men do to women at E. Is a story about what people do to each other when they have never been taught what real intimacy looks like. And if this video ends without acknowledging that it is incomplete, so let's complete it. Carl Jung believed that every human being contains within them both masculine and feminine energy. He called them the animus. And the masculine principle is the drive to act, to achieve, to protect, to pursue. The anima, the feminine principle, is the capacity to feel, to receive, to open, to be present. And here is what Jung observed across decades of clinical work. In each of us there is another whom we do not know. That unknown other, the internal feminine in a man, the internal masculine in a woman, is the part of us that makes complete intimacy possible. When a man is never developed, his anima, he cannot feel. He can act, he can perform, he can provide. But he cannot be present in the way that intimacy requires. And when a woman has never developed her animus, she cannot ask for what she needs. She can receive, she can feel, she can wait, but she cannot speak. The truth that would change everything. This is shared. This is human. This is not a war. This is a wound that lives in both. Let me be honest about something. Women do not always say what they hate about sex. Not because they don't know. They know. But because the world has repeatedly, across generations, across cultures, across kitchens and bedrooms and therapy rooms, sent them one message. Your needs are too much. So they learn to make themselves smaller, to want less, to expect less, to perform satisfaction they don't feel. And the cost of that performance is enormous. Epictetus, who had every reason to rage at a world that denied him freedom, chose instead to go inward to master what he could master. He said, "Seek not the good in external things, seek it in yourself." But here's the thing. Epictetus understood that we sometimes forget. Going inward is not the same as going silent. Going inward means finding the truth inside yourself, and then speaking Ida, a woman who knows what she hates about her intimate experiences, but never speaks out aloud, is doing herself and her partner a profound disservice. Not because silence is weakness, but because silence denies the other person the chance to be better. It denies the relationship, its only real chance. And now for the men. I want to speak to you directly. Not to shame you, not to lecture you, but because I believe you are capable of more than what you may have been taught. Hobbes, in his understanding of human nature, believed that without structure, people default to the condition of man is a condition of war of everyone against everyone. He wrote, describing not a preference, but a default. And in many ways, that default shows up in how men were taught to approach intimacy. Pursue, achieve, move on. A transaction, not a communion. But you are not the default. You are a conscious being. You have the ability to override your conditioning. And the first override is the most important one, SK. Not as a performance, not as a strategy. SK, because you are genuinely curious about what the person in front of you actually experiences. Ask what she likes. Ask what she doesn't like. Ask what makes her feel seen. Ask what makes her feel unseen. And then this is the crucial PART. Listen without defending, without explaining, without justifying. Just receive the information. Because that moment of receiving, of holding, her experience without flinching, that is the intimacy she has been hoping for. Not the physical act. That moment. Now I want to address something important before we close. There is a difference between healthy awareness and paranoia. Everything. We've discussed today the 4 context test, the observation of patterns, the careful evaluation before deep investment. None of it is meant to make you afraid of people. IT is not meant to turn every intimate encounter into a psychological interview. IT is not meant to destroy the beauty of surrender and trust. Because Plato, in his understanding of love, what Epictetus described it as a serious mental disease, he meant it as a truth, not a warning. Love is supposed to be a little irrational, a little dangerous, a little beyond your control. The goal is not to eliminate that. The goal is to fall in love wisely. Albert Ellis, who developed rational emotive behavior therapy, made a distinction between what he called rational and irrational beliefs about love. The irrational belief, I must be loved to feel worthy. The rational belief, I am worthy, and I will seek love that confirms, not contradicts, that truth. Healthy caution is when you observe before you invest fully. Paranoia is when you invest nothing, because you are afraid of loss. One is wisdom, the other is armor masquerading as wisdom. Know the difference in yourself. So let me ask you something. If you have been in that hollow room, if you have given yourself fully and received emptiness in return, what did you do afterward? Did you close? Did you shrink? Did you decide that vulnerability was a mistake? Because that is the response that makes sense. That is the human response. The self-protective response. But it is not the true response. Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And I would add, the second most terrifying thing is to let someone else see you completely. But that terror, that leap, that willingness to be seen anyway, despite the risk, that is where real intimacy lies. Not in the performance, not in the chemistry, not in the body. In the courage to be fully present with another, fully present human being. That is what women want. Not perfection. Not a script. Not a technique. Presence, and presence real, full, undivided presence, is something that anyone can give. Starting today. Starting with the next conversation. Starting with the next time someone stands in front of you and offers you their real self. Music builds slowly, warm and rising. Here's where we land. Women secretly hate sex when a tea is empty, when a tea is absent, when a tea takes from them without asking, when it treats them as a stage for someone else's performance. But the secret beneath that secret, they don't just want better sex. They want proof that they are real to someone, that they are seen, that they matter, that the person across from them arrived fully. Not just their body, not just their hunger, but their attention, their presence, their willingness to be changed by the encounter. Jung said the meeting of two persons transforms both. That transformation is available to you every time you choose presence over performance, every time you choose honesty over comfort, every time you choose to see someone really see them instead of projecting your hope onto them, every time you do the work of the 4 context test, every time you confront your own shadow before expecting someone else to. You are choosing transformation, and transformation is the only intimacy worth having. Pause. Music fades to near silence. Thank you for watching this. Not just watching, for staying, for doing the hard thinking with me. If this changed something in you, even one sentence, even one idea, share IE? Not for the algorithm, for the person in your life who needs to hear this. Because someone, you know, is standing in that hollow room right now. And maybe this video is the key. Here's the truth that no romantic movie will ever tell you. Clarity is an act of love, not suspicion, not paranoia, not coldness. Clarity, the ability to see someone fully, honestly, without the filter of what you hope they are, is one of the most loving things you can do. For them, but especially for yourself. Because you cannot truly connect with someone you have invented. And the frameworks I'm about to give you are not tools for distrust. They are tools for real seeing. There is a difference. And by the end of this segment, you'll know exactly what IT is. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most brilliant and brutally honest philosophers who ever lived, wrote this: "We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people." Think about what that means in the context of intimacy. 3/4 of who a person really is hidden, folded away, compressed into social acceptability. And what does that mean for sex? IT means that what most people bring into intimate moments is only 1/4 of themselves. The polished quarter. The performing quarter. The quarter that has been rehearsed and approved and deemed safe enough to reveal. The other 3/4 the needs they're ashamed of, the wounds they've never named, the expectations they've never spoken, the things they secretly hate but have never said aloud. Those quarters are locked in a room you haven't been given the key to yet. And here's the problem. You think you know someone? You've spent weeks, maybe months, together. But you have only ever seen them in one context. The date context. The best behavior context. The I-want-you-to-me context. That is not a person. That is an audition. Enter. The 4 context test. This is a framework I want you to keep. Write it down if you need to. The principle is simple. You do not truly know how someone will show up in intimacy until you have seen them in 4 specific contexts. Each context reveals a different layer of who they really are. Each context unlocks a different quarter of Schopenhauer's hidden self. Let's go through them one by one. Context 1. Stress. How does this person behave when things go wrong? Not catastrophically wrong. JUST? The minor, daily wrong. The restaurant gets the order wrong. The traffic makes them late. The plan falls apart at the last minute. Watch carefully. Do they regulate? Do they take a breath and problem solve? Or do they externalize, blaming the waiter, the city, everyone around them? This matters in intimacy, because intimacy will go wrong sometimes. There will be moments of miscommunication, of misread signals, of needs that clash or timing that's off. And the person who cannot regulate under minus stress, they will not suddenly find regulation in the vulnerability of the bedroom. What do I ask? Not directly, but naturagi in this context. What was the most stressful thing that happened to you this week? And THEN listen. Not to the content. Listen to the ownership. Do they locate any responsibility in themselves? Or is every problem someone else's fault? Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who governed an empire from the inside of his own mind, first wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." A person who has not yet found that strength in small things will not find it in the big ones. Context 2. Generosity. How does this person give when there is nothing to gain? Not grand gestures. Those are easy. Those are performance. I mean the quiet generosity. Do they notice when you're tired before you say so? Do they offer without being asked? Do they give attention when there is nitrogen monoxide audience watching? This context reveals what Plato called the quality of a person's soul in the moments when nitrogen monoxide 1 is grading them. Plato believed that the soul has 3 parts: reason, spirit, and appetite. The highest soul is one where reason governs appetite. In the context of intimacy, appetite is obvious. But does reason, does consideration govern that appetite? The question to reveal this is subtle. Tell me about. Atamya did something for someone that they never knew about. A person with nothing to offer here is a person whose generosity requires an audience, and an audience is not a partner. Context 3. Conflict. How does this person fight? Not whether they fight. Everyone fights. How they fight. Do they go for the wound? Do they reach for the cruelest available truth and use IT as a weapon? Or do they fight for resolution? Freud observed that in conflict, the unconscious reveals itself with terrifying honesty. The things we say in anger are not lies. They are the truths we have been suppressing. Out of your vulnerabilities will come your strength, Freud said. But first, those vulnerabilities will come out in conflict. Watch for. Do they apologize genuinely, or do they apologize to end the discomfort? Do they remember and reference old wounds as ammunition? Do they make you feel unsafe for having a need? Because the person who makes you feel small for needing things will make you feel invisible in intimacy. The question here is indirect. You create the context. Disagree with them, mildly, about something low stakes, and watch what happens. Not to trap them, to learn them. Context 4. Boredom. This is the most overlooked context of all. Who is this person when there is nothing happening? No event. Nitrogen monoxide activity. Nitrogen monoxide plan. Just time. Empty, unstructured time. Are they comfortable with silence? Are they comfortable with you in silence? Or do they reach for their phone? For distraction? For anything to avoid simply being present? Intimacy, at its deepest, is an act of presence. Not performance. Not effort. Just. I am here, with you, and that is enough. A person who cannot tolerate boredom has never learned to be with themselves. And Peterson has said something that cuts to the heart of this. If you don't know who you are, you can't be present for someone else. You'll use them as a mirror instead of seeing them as a person. Using someone as a mirror. That is exactly what women hate most about sex. Being used as a reflection instead of being seen as a self. The question that reveals this context. What do you do when you have a completely free day with nitrogen monoxide plans? Listen for richness. Listen for inner life. Listen for someone who has a relationship with their own mind. Because that is Barasian, who can show up for yours. For context. For questions. For layers of a person. Stress. Generosity. Conflict. Boredom. You are not looking for perfection in any of these. You are looking for pattern. Pattern is the truth beneath the performance. And this is what Machiavelli meant, not the cartoonish villain version, but the real philosopher, when he wrote, "Never was anything great, achieved without danger." The danger here is not risk for its own sake. IT is the risk of seeing clearly, of looking at what's actually there instead of what you hope is there. Because that clarity, that willingness to observe before you invest, that is how you protect not just your body, but your soul. Let me tell you about the most dangerous moment in any relationship. It is not the moment of betrayal. It is not the argument that ends everything. It is the moment before, when you could have seen IT coming, when the signs were right there in front of you, and you chose, without realizing it, not to look. That moment. That is where most of the damage happens. And the terrifying thing is this: you are not stupid. You are not weak. You are not careless. You are human. And being human means you are extraordinarily vulnerable to one of the most powerful forces in psychology. IT is called attraction bias, and it is worth understanding completely. Attraction bias is not just about finding someone beautiful. IT is about what beauty does to your brain. When you are powerfully drawn to someone, when you feel that pull, that heat, that certainty that this person is different, your mind begins to do something remarkable. IT begins to edit. IT quietly removes the evidence that contradicts the story you want to believe. IT amplifies the moments that confirm your desire. IT builds a version of that person that is more idea than individual. Jung had a word for this constructed version. He called it the persona. The persona is the face we show the world. The polished version. The curated self. IT is not a lie, exactly. But it is not the whole truth. Jung wrote, The persona is a complicated system of relations between the individual consciousness and society. Fittingly enough, a kind of mask, designed on the one hand to make a definite impression upon others, and on the other, to conceal the true nature of the individual. And here is the part that breaks everything open. When you fall for someone's persona, you are not falling for them. You are falling for the mask they have learned to wear, and the mask always fits perfectly. Until it doesn't. Now enter the hero fantasy. This is the second force that blinds us. The hero fantasy is when we fall in love, not with a person, but with a project. We look at someone and we think, they are almost perfect. If I can just help them heal their wound, soften their edge, open their heart, then we will have something extraordinary. This fantasy is seductive because it feels noble. It feels like love. It feels like faith. But Nietzsche warned us about this kind of self-deception. He wrote, "The most common lie is that which one lies to himself. Lying to others is relatively an exception." The hero fantasy is that lie. The lie where you tell yourself you are being patient and loving, when actually you are refusing to see who someone really is, because you are too attached to who you need them to be. Women fall into this trap. Men fall into this trap. But today, we are talking about intimacy, and in the context of intimacy, this fantasy is particularly destructive. Because when a woman enters a physical relationship with someone she is still trying to fix, she is not having sex with a partner. She's having sex with a hope. And hopes do not hold you back. Hopes do not notice you. Hopes do not stay. The third force is the most insidious. Willful blindness. Willful blindness is not ignorance. Ignorance means you don't have the information. Willful blindness means you have the information. You felt it in your gut. You saw the small moment where something was off. The way he looked at his phone instead of at you. The way she answered a question about vulnerability with a joke. The way they changed the subject every single time things got real and you decided, quietly, in some back room of your mind, not to know. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who was born a slave and became one of the wisest men in history, said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. But before you can react correctly, you have to see clearly. And willful blindness is a choice to dim the lights before the seeing can begin." So what are the wrong approaches people take when they finally sense something is off? There are three, and they are all completely understandable. And they are all completely destructive. The first wrong approach. Trying to change someone. The moment you decide your job is to make someone capable of intimacy, you have already lost. You cannot teach someone to be present. You cannot argue someone into vulnerability. You cannot love someone into readiness. Robert Greene, in his study of human nature, was direct about this. Humans are not capable of devoting themselves to abstract notions of fairness and morality. It is only when they feel the pull of their own interest that they truly listen. In other words, people change when they want to, not when you need them to, not when you pray for them to. When they decide. And you cannot decide that for anyone. The second wrong approach. Playing games. Some people, when they sense disconnection in intimacy, respond by becoming strategic. Withholding, testing, performing disinterest to provoke interest. Machiavelli, often misunderstood, was a realist about power. But even Machiavelli understood this. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Apply that to your intimate life. The quality of your relationships reflects the quality of yourself. Games are a symptom of one thing: fear of direct truth. And fear of direct truth and intimacy will always compound the very disconnection you're trying to fix. The third wrong approach, ignoring your gut. This is the one nobody admits to. Your gut knew. Your gut knew before the first conversation ended. Your gut felt the performance in their words. Your gut registered the split second of discomfort when you asked for something real. And you talked your gut out of it. Because the alternative, trusting what you feel, meant walking away from something you desperately wanted to be real. Here's what Carl Jung would say about all three of these wrong approaches. They are all expressions of one failure: the failure to confront the shadow. The shadow is the part of a person and of yourself that lives in the dark. Not evil, necessarily, just unexamined. Jung wrote, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." The man who has never examined his capacity for absence. The woman who has never examined her pattern of choosing unavailable people. These are shadow dynamics, and they play out most powerfully in the most intimate spaces. Because the bedroom is where all of our unexamined material surfaces. All of our wounds. All of our needs. All of our unspoken hunger. And if neither person in that room has done the work of seeing their own shadow, they are two blind people trying to guide each other home. This is the diagnosis: attraction bias, hero fantasy, willful blindness. The persona that obscures the shadow. The three wrong responses that make it all worse. In the next segment, we are going to turn this around completely. We are going to talk about the right approach, the tools, the questions, the framework I call the for context test. This is the thing that changes everything. Not a magic formula. Not a trick. A method of seeing clearly before you are already standing in the hollow room. You know that feeling. You gave everything. You showed up. You were patient. You were present. You opened yourself up in ways you had never done before. And in that moment, in that room, in that bed, you thought, this is it. This is connection. This is real. And then it ended, and something felt wrong. Not wrong like a fight. Not wrong like a betrayal. Wrong like a room that looks exactly like home but smells like a stranger's house. You couldn't name it. So you said nothing. You smiled. You stayed. You convinced yourself it was fine, but it wasn't fine. It was empty. Today, we are going to name that feeling. Not for drama. Not for pain. But because a thing you cannot name is a thing you cannot change. And what we're talking about today is one of the most buried truths in all of human intimacy. What women secretly hate about sex. Not hate as in anger. Hate as in that quiet grief that lives just beneath the surface of a forced smile. This video is not an attack on men. It is not a victim story about women. It is an honest conversation about what happens when two people share the most intimate act possible, and one of them walks away feeling more alone than when they started. That is the real topic. That is what nitrogen monoxide 1 talks about. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been physically close to someone but as touching, nothing between you, and still felt completely invisible? If you have, you already understand what we're about to discuss. Carl Jung, the greatest psychologist who ever lived, said something that has haunted me since I first read it. He said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Read that again. Both are transformed. Not one. Not just you. Both. And what women secretly hate about sex at the deepest level is when they offer that transformation and receive nothing back. When they show up fully and the other person never came at all. Now, let me be careful here. Because what I'm about to say next is not a simple thing. Women are not a category. They are individuals. Every woman is different. Every experience is different, but there are patterns. There are truths that appear again and again across thousands of conversations, across centuries of psychology, across every culture and every generation. And those truths are what we're here to examine. Not to judge, not to shame, but to understand. Here's the first truth. Women hate sex when it is disconnected from the person having IT. That sounds simple. IT's not. Sigmund Freud spent his entire career trying to understand the relationship between desire and the self. He believed that what we want sexually is never really about the physical act. IT's about the wound. IT's about what we were never given. IT's about the mother, the father, the child who was told they were not enough. Freud was controversial. He was flawed. He was human. But on this point, he was devastatingly correct. We carry our whole history into the bedroom. And what women hate, what quietly destroys them, is when a man shows up to that room with his history, his need, his hunger, and never asks about hers. That is not a small thing. That is everything. Think about what intimacy actually requires. You have to be seen. You have to trust that who you are, not just what you look like, not just what you do, but who you are in your most unguarded moment. He's safe. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote that all human desire is ultimately the will to persist, the will to be confirmed, to be real to another person. He called it will to live, that primal, aching need to matter. And in intimacy, that need is at its most naked. Naked is not a metaphor here. When a woman undresses for someone she trusts, she is not just removing clothes, she is removing armor. She is saying, "Here I am, the real me. Don't hurt this." And what she secretly hates, what she can never quite say aloud, is when the person she trusted with that is already thinking about something else, already gone before it started. There's a word for this, and it's not a clinical word. It's just a human word. Absence. Physical presence. Emotional absence. A body in the room that never truly arrived. Robert Greene, in his study of human power and seduction, wrote that the greatest form of disrespect is indifference, not cruelty, not violence. Indifference, because cruelty at least requires you to care enough to act. Indifference says, "You do not exist enough to affect me." And in the context of intimacy, indifference is catastrophic. A woman who gives herself fully, vulnerably, honestly, and receives indifference in return does not get angry right away. She gets quiet. She adjusts. She accommodates. She tells herself it's okay. And she carries that quiet with her for years. That is the wound we are talking about today. Not the dramatic wound. Not the obvious wound. The slow wound. The invisible wound. The one where you gave everything and nitrogen monoxide, one noticed. Now here is what I want you to understand. Before we go deeper, this is not a blame video. The men who show up absent are often not cruel people. Most of them don't even know they're doing IT. They were never taught what presence means. They were never shown what intimacy looks like beyond the physical. They were raised in a world that told them, perform, achieve, dominate. And then someone they love stands in front of them asking for something entirely different. Asking to be met. And they don't know how. Jordan Peterson has said many things that are controversial. But one thing he said that rings absolutely true is this: you are not the master of your fate, but you are responsible for your response to it. That is the conversation we are building toward. Not whose fault IT is, but what is possible once we see clearly. Let me leave you with one image before we move on. Imagine two people standing in a dark room. One of them lights a candle. The other one stands there and watches IT burn. That is the moment we are talking about. The woman who lit the candle. The man who watched IT neither. One is a villain, but only one of them is standing in the dark afterward. In the next segment, we are going to go deeper. We are going to look at why people miss what matters most when they're attracted to someone. We're going to talk about the hero fantasy, the willful blindness, the way desire hijacks our judgment, And we're going to meet Carl Jung's most dangerous concept, the shadow, and explain why it shows up right in the middle of your most intimate moments. But before I continue, are you still with me? If this is landing, if this is resonating, if you've ever felt that hollow room, that quiet grief, that moment of being present and still somehow alone, drop a comment. Tell me, I felt this. Because what we're building in this video is not just content. I tease a conversation that should have happened a long time ago. And I want to know you're ready for it.